Small Business Tip Show, Episode 13. Welcome. This is a Small Business Tip Show. I'm your host, Frank Thomas, with Nancy Boisvert. We've got a great show for you today. It's going to be an interesting show in the fact that we're going to be talking about getting more clients in the door. But not only that, we're going to show you a real-life example because now we're also broadcasting on YouTube. So stay tuned. So, Nancy, things are changing. Things are changing once again. How are you today, Nance?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you, Frank?
I'm doing awesome. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, things are changing. We have only really been broadcasting on iTunes, and that's not going to stop. But now we're going to start broadcasting on YouTube as well, which is very exciting. So we're also doing a video live stream with the normal things that we're all doing. And this show is really appropriate because it's talking about getting more clients in the door. And I'm hoping doing this on YouTube as well is going to help us get more people to watch the show, listen to the show, and get more involved. And we've had great response on iTunes, and I just want to build on that in the YouTube environment. So getting more clients in the door. Right now, the year is 2015, and there's lots of gloom and doom in the markets, Nance. I'm sure you've been hearing about that.
You know, there have been a lot of people talking about the downturn and how it's affected their revenue and their prospects. A lot of people are holding back on making investments in their business right now. But a lot of the smarter people and the people who don't show all their cards all at once, that hold back a little bit in case there's a downturn, are actually taking advantage and are benefiting from this downturn because they're able to continue to market and poise themselves so that when the market does rebound, as it always does, that they'll be in a better position to be out of the gate ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because that has a real business sense as well to it, in that they're willing to put fear aside and step into an uncertain situation for potentially a good profit. And that's how the markets work: buy low, sell high, and that's the way you do it.
Well, and I think what happens is a lot of times businesses aren't maybe as strategic as they should be. I think we all get carried away when times are good and we kind of run with things. But the prudent thing to do is always hold a little bit back and be prepared, because we're in a free enterprise system, but that doesn't mean that even the communist and socialist systems, they also have their ebb and flow. And if you always hold back a little bit and bank for that inevitable downturn, then you're able to weather the storm a whole lot better.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And, again, that has a real business sense to it as well, because I know in business you have your ebbs and flows. And with a gloomy market, it's always important to, when things are going well, don't spend all the money. Hold on to it. Make sure you space it out. You make sure that your business can sustain. Like if you've got 6 months in the bank, don't go, woohoo, time to go to Florida. It's time to bank that away and say, okay, I'm good for this number of months. And maybe you take a bit of it and invest it into your business. I've done that. And as well as sometimes you just hold on to it. I've had up to 3 or 4 months in the bank at a time. And I've had these slumps in business where, checks don't get through or one reason or another. And I needed that during that slumpy period. But we're talking today about getting more clients in the door. We've been looking at lots of online things we can do, but there's lots of offline things, a lot of conventional, traditional things that we can do that really still do work. And we've talked about these things. And funny enough, Nancy and I always talk about the show before we actually commit ourselves to a show to really kind of get a feeling of what we want to talk about and what it is. And we actually realize that online and offline, they're different, but they're a lot the same. And there's always things that always come back. There's always things that are consistent across the board, like they don't change. And the one thing, Nance, that you had brought out, that branding is important. You have to know your identity and who you are. So give us more examples.
Well, you need to know your identity. You need to know your brand. You need to always be making sure that you're promoting and putting your brand forward in a positive way. And that's really what marketing in general is about, whether it's offline or whether it's online. It's about promoting your brand getting your message out there, letting people know that you're there and what it is that you do, your points of difference, your points of differentiation, your value proposition, and just make sure that people understand that you're there. So whether you're using an offline strategy or an online strategy, the main thing is just to make sure that you've got your brand finalized and consistent, and that you're moving it forward in a positive fashion.
Right. And one thing we kind of came across too is the fact that your brand, part of your brand is actually making sure when you're looking online and offline, you're showing a consistent face. And it's important you're showing a face. You don't want to be a faceless organization. And the one thing that we've both learned through business is the fact that you have to become a person. You have to become a person to another person. You have to establish those relationships. And that's what it's all about, because credibility doesn't come through anything but true blue relationships.
Well, that's the nice thing about video. And when I started integrating YouTube and doing some marketing tips earlier this year, my first videos were, I look back and it's kind of like yikes, because I was so uncomfortable being in front of this camera. I come from a long line of people who that's how all my pictures are. So it took me a while to get used to that, and I didn't want to go over about 2 or 3 minutes for the videos. So I was very scripted in that first series, and it showed. But as I continue to do this, I get more and more comfortable with the camera. I start to look at the lens, and I see an audience as opposed to a camera.
Exactly.
And I think that that's part of the secret. And the nice thing about it, which is obviously why we're starting to integrate this into what we're trying to do here and share on the Small Business Tips Show, is by giving a face to the voice, giving a face to the brand, you start to personalize. People can start to feel like they get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, hence why video is becoming a medium to use when you want to sell online. Absolutely.
Much more than just cat videos.
There's a lot to do with cat videos. I'm still trying to find a way to monetize on cat videos, and I'll figure that out. But you're right. I had done a project with somebody. They were in furnace repair in our local city next to us, and they really wanted to build their client base. So I said to them, hey, let's put together some videos. You can show me things that the client can do as a precursor to having problems with their furnace. So in other words, you start building that relationship before they ever need to phone you. And he was up to it. So we did, I think, 4 or 5 videos and put them online, put them on YouTube. The one video in the first year got over 1,000 views. And, it might not sound like very much, but we're talking, I didn't do anything to help them find these videos. I didn't do anything to rank them, or I didn't do anything. I just put the videos up and hoped for the best, and they got a lot of attention. And a lot of people phoned and made appointments because they were like looking for somebody to help repair their furnace, but they were very, very happy because they had actually established a relationship with the person who answered the phone way before they even made the phone call, and it made such a difference to them. It was like, oh, I'm supposed to be, you're the guy. Hey, yes, that's great. Thank you so much. You really made me feel comfortable. And I really want you to come out and take a look at this because something's not right. And he got a lot of business from those videos.
He was demonstrating his expertise.
Exactly. And, in the end, hey, he's trying to get more clients through the door. But you know something? You have to realize that you want to catch your clients in multiple stages. And that's something we never talked about. We want to catch our clients when they're thinking anything about our trade or about what we do or about our product. So let's say it is furnace repair that you're in. Now, there's furnace maintenance. So what will you do is, people in the fall start looking, what do I do to maintain my furnace? Or what is the best filter form if I got a forced air furnace for that forced air furnace? Or how do I take care of my hot water tank? And these are all questions I've searched on Google and YouTube and that. And don't be kidding yourself. YouTube is a search engine, so it's important to get yourself ranked there as well. But you get them there and they see your face. And then when it comes time and let's say something goes wrong, they see your face again. So what's happening is you're committing an action. And in advertising, they say you would need 13 touches for somebody to really begin to trust you and reach out and touch in advertising. So you're doing that automatically. And then the cool thing is you're not engaging them for 10 seconds or 30 seconds. You could be engaging them for a full solid 10 or 15 minutes. So imagine the power of that, because that relation does start right there. And even if you've never talked to that person, and I found that in my business, I did a whole bunch of videos on a certain product, and I've gotten lots of business from those videos, and I was teaching the people how to use the product. Now, they'd phone me, and they'd say, Frank, it's good to talk to you. I haven't had a chance to talk to you yet, but, I feel like I know you.
Right.
And, that's powerful. Like I have hundreds of people who know me on this particular product platform, and they've never met me.
Well, and the thing is, too, you did several videos. Your client with the furnace repair, he did several videos, and like you say, it's a matter of then people see him again and again, and maybe it's an apropos time to bring it up, given that we have an election in a little less than a month now coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, and some of my clients know, I did in one of my previous incarnations, I was involved in it at the federal political level, and I managed an election campaign back in 1993. And one of the things that is really important is name recognition. It comes back to that branding thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Name recognition. So what you have to do is you have to make sure that you're seen. You have to be door knocking. You have to be out there, and then people start to recognize things, and then they can identify the face with the name.
Yep.
And that trust, as you pointed out, begins to have a foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Because, one thing I think that a lot of the election officials do that is really a detriment to themselves is they don't make themselves a face recognizable to the public outside of elections.
Right. That's exactly right.
And I think it's so important, and this is actually one of our points we're going to bring up, is networking. Let people see you, know who you are, and how you can help them. It's not about you. It's never about you. It's about them. And
Exactly.
You must always remember that. Whenever you put out an ad, you put out anything, it's got to always be customer or contact focused. It can't be focused on you, because immediately it's one thing for a person to say to you, it's like, Nats, you come to me and say, Frank, you are like the best marketer on the planet. I'd bow down to you. I would be humbled beyond belief because I know how good of a marketer you are. And I know it's not true. So, but the fact of the matter is, if I turned around and said, Nats, I'm the best marketer in the world, you'd be like, oh, yeah.
Right.
Get a life, dude.
Well, it's a matter of building the credibility too, right?
Exactly.
And let's get serious. Why do people buy your service or your product? You are either taking care of a need or a want.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't look at those videos because they weren't having problems with their furnace, or in your case, because they didn't want to learn about that software. They needed furnace repair, or they wanted to learn about that software product.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, it's often referred to as a pain point. But I like to make it a little bit bigger than that, because lots of times it's not necessarily a pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's a want.
Exactly. And, I've always said people always, you might need everything, but if you want something, you're going to get it first. And
Right.
Yes. Actually kind of an expression came to my mind, and we can test the theory on this, but when need meets want, it creates an opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Because when somebody needs it and they want it, you've got a sale, And if you can satisfy, and this is important too, you got to be the problem solver. I remember hearing one time, in the Christian circles, there's Jesus, and it was Jim Rohn who said this, and I've never forgotten it. And he says, I'm not a highly religious person or anything, but he says, what made Jesus really popular was he was a problem solver. You got a broken leg, problem solved. You're broke, problem solved. And he was, first and foremost, to the people, a problem solver. He would come in and
Right.
solve their problems. And how can we do any less in business? We need to be problem solvers.
And we also have to understand that once that problem has been resolved for that person, that it doesn't end there.
No,
You want
absolutely
to
not.
you want to have that client for a lifetime. You want to get referrals from that client. You want to turn them into an ambassador for your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to do that if you're in there for the quick punch, the knockout, get your money and run. You have to be there. You have to have your credibility. You have to be trustworthy, and you have to continue to resolve issues and almost anticipate what it is that that client needs now or will need in the future.
Exactly, exactly. We're going to get to that. I know we've touched into it, but I want to hold that goodness off till later.
Right.
Because that's really a great thing to be talking about as well. So we want to be networking, as we mentioned. We want to not be a faceless organization, as we've mentioned. We want to, and we've already alluded to this, we want to demonstrate our expertise. What can our product or what can we as a service do to help you, to solve your problem? And that's critically important. And that sometimes is the hardest thing to do, because I was talking to my kids this weekend, and I was talking to them, my daughter, about going and taking an interview at a radio station as an announcer on the radio station. And she was like, oh, but. And I said, darling, they don't know that.
Right.
It's not that it's a negative thing or it's going to impact your job, because if it is, you need to talk to them about that. If you can't talk between 10 and 11, then they need to know that. But if it's something in your past that's not going to affect your job, it's not important. And it's not that you're being deceitful, but you want to present exactly what you want the client to see. And that's what they want to see as well.
And what we forget, sorry to jump in there, Frank.
That's fine.
What we forget about sometimes too is that even though whatever it is that we deliver may not be perfect to us, because we know what the utopia was of our project that we were going to do, somehow it always seems to work.
Exactly.
And the client or the prospect out there doesn't know that it took you 3 times and you didn't quite get the car with the clowns.
Exactly. And that was actually where I was leading this to, in that we always discount what we know. We always put a sticker price. We always put a garage sale price on what we know, because it's easy to us.
Right.
I was actually talking to somebody this morning. We're working on a joint venture together. And he was like, oh, you're so smart, like you did this and you did this and you did this. And I'm like, oh, please, you don't pat my ego, because I'm not into that, But he's like, you got to really realize that a lot of
That's right.
the testers the software we're building are coming back saying, wow, this is awesome. This works really good. And they would bring great things to the table. And I've already instituted some of the ideas. And they're just thrilled, and they're like, wow. But the fact of the matter is, I'm like, well, that was easy.
Yeah,
That was
to you,
point.
it's easy.
It was easy. It took me, there's one guy who brought an idea, a feature to the table, and I went, that's brilliant. And I put it in. It took me about an hour, and I was like, this has got to be in the software. And I know, Nancy, that you've been testing this software too.
Yeah.
I don't want to allude to what it is yet, because I really haven't opened up to the public. But when you see it, you're going to go, this is brilliant. You're going to like this. And it's not my idea. It's just that I put the idea in place. It's somebody else who is a marketer came forth on markets in this particular arena and said, you got to be doing this, because nobody else is doing this. This is so important. And I went, never thought about it. So you need to realize that we always discount what we know, and I think that is so important. We bring to the table our whole life of experiences and all our bugaboos and all our inconsistencies and all our insecurities. And one of the best things that I have found and learned how to do in business is, when I come to the table, I leave them outside the room. My daughter had said to me, but Dad, what happens when they're going to see my inexperience? Because she's just finished, she's just in college right now for radio broadcasting. I don't really have a lot of experience. And I said, well, that's fine. Be honest with them.
Yeah.
Be honest with them.
None of us did when we first started.
No, absolutely. And but tell them, but work towards that. Build experience now. And but she says, well, what happens if they start asking me questions I don't know how to answer? And I said, something? That's okay. When I do interviews, I purposefully, when I'm hiring somebody, I'll start asking. I said, I want to, because I hire technical people quite often, and I'll say to them, I'm going to start asking you questions, and I'm not expecting you to answer them all. I'm totally not expecting you, but I need to gauge where your knowledge is. So I'd start asking easy questions like, what's your first name, Bob? To, how do you XYZ, XABC, da 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 da, and I would get very technical. of course, in the scope of the project, and see if they can answer that question or not. And you know something? I found that I'm not really testing them to see how much I can get out of them. That's important to know what they know, but I'm testing their honesty.
Yes.
I'm testing to see if they can say, because unfortunately, IT people are terrible when it comes to honesty, and I really mean that. And I'm an IT person from 25 years back, because of the fact, and I learned this lesson early, that if you don't know, say, I really don't know, but I know where I can get that information for you. If you want to, I can figure that out and get back to you.
Well, that's the whole thing. There is no shame to not knowing everything, but owning up to it and just saying, you know what, that's a really good question, and I don't know that, but I can work to resolve that issue and find out the answer to that question.
I know I once, and it's getting off topic a bit, but it really kind of fits into this conversation. I once did a job interview with a large telecommunications company. I just got certified in this particular area that they wanted to hire me in. But I was listening. I went to the interview. I was sitting in the interview, and I realized they needed an experienced person. I actually stopped the interview. I said, "Guys, I'm the wrong guy."
Right.
Did I feel good? No, I felt awful because I really wanted this job. It was awesome, and but I knew it was beyond my level of expertise. And I said, this is beyond me. And the person who's ahead of the project came to me and said, "Well, if this happened, what would you do?" I said, "Well, I'd have to go by the book because that's all I really know. I don't have any expertise to do it a better way."
Right.
And they were like, "Well, we want somebody who's going to do it by the book." And
there you go.
They hired me.
So you're the right fit after all.
I was the right fit, and they realized, me walking in, that I was a little bit behind the eight ball. I didn't have all the experience, but they made the way to give me that experience. They allowed me to work, and I worked hard. I'm not going to lie to you. I did 12-hour days. I'd spend 8 hours working and then 4 hours trying to figure out what the heck I just did.
Right.
But something, in 3 to 6 months, I became an absolute expert in my particular field at that point in time. So always be ready, and that's showing your expertise as well. And sometimes showing a lack of expertise is showing your humility. It's showing that you're human and you don't know everything. I know I'm developing a piece of software right now. It doesn't do everything. It's not going to brush your teeth. It's not going to comb your hair, but it's going to do other things. And
I'm reminded of a slogan that a company had. This goes back probably 15 or 20 years back in the newspaper days. And they had a little ad in there, a little display ad. And their slogan was, "No job too small, some jobs too big."
Yeah, that's good.
So, they were being right up front. They just didn't have the manpower or the ability to handle certain jobs.
Exactly. Now, let's look at other ways we can demonstrate our expertise. We've actually illustrated one, and that was we put videos online and show them how the customer can avoid a situation, or you can show them how to do something as you're doing your videos, Nancy. In marketing, you're showing them, your latest series is a series using offline marketing as a strategy for your business.
Right.
And you're showing things you can do in that series, so you're showing your expertise. And that's really good because, something, even marketers, and you've commented, even you've had another marketer approach you and said, "Wow, I really like it. I want to do business with you." It's not because you're the guru of marketing, but because you're like-minded and he can see your expertise. And what that does is it makes you an expert in their minds right away.
Exactly,
an expert in a good way, of course. Other ways are doing lunch and learns. And I've not seen this done very recently. It used to be, actually, I would have to say in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was a very popular thing to do.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, yeah.
Yeah, and I've not seen lunch and learns, but it's a very effective way if you have a market, and let's say you already have a customer base and you want to sell a new product to that customer base. You can do a lunch and learn and bring them in and show, and you don't want to make it a sales fest because people get really turned off by that. But what you can do is you can show them the benefits and show them, like, if you don't want to do this, here's another way you can do it. And you make it something legitimate they can walk away with.
And the ideal of a lunch and learn or a seminar like that would be to be live in front of a small group of people. But let's remember that technology allows us to integrate a lot of offline and online strategies. So worst case scenario, or if you're in a small town and you're bringing people in who are interested from a broader place, you can always do something via, a Skype meeting or a Google Hangout or something like that.
Absolutely. And, don't be afraid. And that brings up a really good point that I didn't even think of mentioning is if you're doing a lunch and learn and it's live, make sure you tape it.
Yes.
Make sure you got a good clip-on mic or you got a good mic in front of you, a stand mic. I'm using a stand mic here. You're using a boom mic on your from your ear. Record it and make a copy of it because you can use it again and again and again. There is one thing that is helping my wife. She has a quilting business, and she is getting more business because she's going to the quilting guilds and she's doing instructions. These are the threads you want to use. And this is what you want to do. And she might give the same speech to the 5 different quilting guilds, and that's fine. We tape them all.
Yep.
And then what we do is we turn around and we get them online, and we say to her, she has a mailing list, and we say to the mailing list, hey, make sure you check out the threads you should use, the threads you shouldn't use.
Right.
And it's, again, showing her expertise in different places. I can't remember where I saw it. I wish I could find it again. It was something I watched. It was a video I watched online. It was talking about, shame on, the context was shame on you if you don't multi-use every experience.
Yes.
When you're writing a book, or let's say you're doing a podcast, shame on you if you don't transcribe it. Shame on
my
you
first
if you don't
my
do
first
video.
video series, right? My first video series, the top 10 marketing mistakes that small businesses make, that was based on a course that I've taught and a book that I've written that's available on Amazon, right? It's just a matter of approaching an audience in a different way, and probably a different audience, because somebody who knows to go on Amazon and find my book might not see me on YouTube, or they might not go to my website, and vice versa.
Exactly. And another thing, too, that I think might be important to bring out is don't be afraid to mention the same thing again. Just because you might have mentioned it. Because when I started doing the Small Business Tips Show as a podcast, I was afraid of mentioning the same things over again. But I found out 2 things. First one is it's impossible not to mention it more than once. And second, you help cement the point when you do mention it more than once.
Exactly.
You might give a different example. You might bring it into a different context, but you cement the point better. And I've actually listened to a lot of other mentors and thought leaders and the business gurus. And you know something? They all have their place where they make their stand, and they do mention the same things over and over and over again, and I never realized it.
Well, it's that golden rule of giving a presentation or a speech, right? You tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. That's the 3 steps, of a presentation or a speech.
And the interesting thing too is we've recognized that that society now is a society of inattention. I don't think that's ever changed. I think we've always had really short attention spans, but technology has fostered that.
Yes.
It has made it so we can, when you're watching somebody, you're talking to somebody, how unusual is it nowadays to have somebody talking to you and texting at the same time?
I know.
It drives me nuts.
I was going to say, personally, I can't stand that.
Yeah, we're getting old, Nance. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think that is exactly it. The younger generation, they don't even think twice about it.
Yeah, and in business, I have actually, and this is something I've been training my children because they're in their 20s now. I said to them, if you're in a business meeting, that phone better be turned off.
Yeah.
You need to stand out, and today you can stand out so easy. Shave your face. Oh, if you're a woman, you don't want to shave your face. But if a man, absolutely, be shaved, be clean cut, wear something nice. You don't have to be dressed up to the nines, but you got to look nice.
Yep.
And turn your phone off. You're making this time for, it would be like we're doing the show and hold on, Nance. I'm just going to text for a second. It'd be very distracting to the show, to the listeners, to the viewers, and I would never do that. And
again, maybe it's our age, but I think that it's disrespectful to the person that you're with, that they're not worthy of your full attention for that span of time, whether it's 5 minutes or 35 minutes.
Yep.
I'm sure that you can live without a text for that long.
You're right. This happened about 7 years ago, so it was really kind of in the beginning of the texting realm and that. And this guy had brought his cell phone, and it was a big meeting. It was a big sale. It was a $50,000 or $60,000 sale, and the salesperson was talking to me, and we were talking back and forth, and it was And I was the decision maker on this, so he was trying very hard to show his product in the very best light. And near the end, I was asking him some questions, and he kept seeming his attention was missing, and he was looking down, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And
either he wet his pants, or
he was sitting and looking at his messages that were coming up on his phone to see who'd phoned him, or the meeting, and he lost the sale.
Mm-hmm.
He lost the sale immediately with me, because if I'm not that important to continue talking to me until the moment, he could have walked out the door could have closed in his back, and he could have texted his face off and listened to every message and phoned everybody, and I wouldn't have known. And because he actually gave me a great presentation, and the product looked pretty good, but he lost me as a customer right then and there.
Exactly.
So so let's talk more about our branding again. This is something that you do talk a lot about with your clients, as well as in a lot of your video series, is developing that brand, developing a consistent look and feel across the board. I keep the same theme music on the Small Business Tip Show again and again and again. I'm sick of it. I'll be perfectly honest with you. But you know something? Even when I hear it, I recognize it as, to me, this is the show. And it puts me in show mode, which is great.
I do the same thing with my YouTube. I use the same music and the same intro slide. And,
somebody once said to me, and this is important, you might get bored of the way your advertising looks. Everybody in your company might get bored of the way your advertising looks. When your accountant comes to you and says, it's time to change your advertising because it's getting boring, maybe it's time to change it, because your accountant doesn't care. If he says it to you, maybe it's time to update things. But, once you've chosen a path and once it works, I'm not saying don't tweak it. That's different. But don't online I've seen people who have a business card that looks totally different from their website, which looks totally different from their advertising in the paper, and it looks like 3 completely different businesses.
Well, that's the whole thing, is how do you build that credibility if you're showing a split personality? And how good, especially if you're a marketer, how well are you going to market a company and teach them how to be consistent if you're all over the map? And I keep coming back to, you made the comment about you might be bored with what you've got. Coca-Cola doesn't change their logo because they got sick of it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't change the shape of their bottle because they get sick of it. And the couple times that they did try to change some things, they always did market testing first. And as we all know, the new Coke was a big flop for them, and they went back to the original original formula. So you have to be very, very careful. You want to be recognized. And I would say that branding hasn't really changed, but how people talk about what branding has changed over time. Branding really should have been all about what it is all about now. Branding used to be thought of as a logo and colors.
Mm-hmm.
Branding is about your logo and your corporate colors. But branding is also making sure that you have integrated what your mission and your vision statements are, and that it's being out there and recognized within the look and feel of your business, so that everybody gets a sense of what it is that you're about in everything that you do, whether it's your tagline, whether it's your colors, whether it's your music, whether it's, whatever it is, you have to make sure that it speaks about the soul, the heart and soul of your company.
Exactly. And we have a lot more to tell you, but you're going to have to wait till next week. Next week, we're going to get deeper into the branding. We're going to be looking more at using technology, building a plan, offline things you can do like word of mouth, how to get better reviews easier, how to handle negative reviews, as a whole, how to get more clients in the door.
Right.
So make sure you stop over to look at Nancy's new series. It's a series on offline marketing as a strategy for your business. Nancy, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
It's a six video series. It just kind of touches on the high points. I've tried to keep the videos fairly concise, and you can find them on my website, www.agapemarketing.com, and just go to my articles and post page.
Excellent. And also make sure you come over to the Small Business Tips Show website. That's smallbusinesstipshow.com. And there's a free gift there for you as well. It's called Are You Ready to Live Your Passions? Be sure to subscribe at the Small Business Tips, and you'll receive a guide, Making Your Passion Your Purpose, because I personally believe that you got to be working in your passion if you want to be wildly successful. Make sure you stay tuned next week for part 2 of how to get more clients in your door. Nancy, we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Frank.